Hey everyone, welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. It's been a while since I made any weapon build content, so to get back into the rhythm of making these videos, I thought I would start with a series covering some of my favorite builds in the game, starting with high-level meta setups, and then covering my favorite budget and just for fun weapons afterwards. In the current state of Tarkov, I would argue that right now we have a pretty good diversity of viable builds. Pretty much every ammo type has at least one weapon that is competitive in the current PvP meta, and even super budget stuff like shotguns are in a place right now where they can legitimately compete against the most expensive setups out there. With that being said, I'm not trying to rank these builds as the 3 best weapons in all of Escape from Tarkov, but these are my 3 most used meta builds, and I have a reasoning behind why each is a favorite of mine, which I'll briefly talk about while I go over the builds individually. Obviously, each of these setups is going to be expensive and require high levels to build, and I'm not going to substitute anything for budget parts because these are the builds that I take out when money is no longer an issue. So with that intro out of the way, let's get started with my top 3 list of PvP meta builds in Escape from Tarkov. First up for this video, it shouldn't really come as a surprise that I'm going with the M4A1 as one of my all-time favorite meta setups in Tarkov. If you've been around the channel for long or watched me stream at all, you'll quickly see this is one of my most used weapons and one that I've made a ton of build videos for in the past. The M4 kind of does it all, which is why I like it so much. It has high accuracy and velocity, making it pretty good at long range, and it has a high fire rate and low recoil, making it equally as good when you're spraying full auto at close range. The M4 also has some great ammo selection in M855A1 and M995 rounds, both of which are pretty much equally as good for PvP encounters. I would say the direct competitor to the M4 is the HK416, which is quite similar in a lot of respects and even uses the same ammo, with a slightly higher fire rate. There's basically 2 reasons that I prefer the M4 to the HK. First, I feel the slightly lower fire rate makes the initial recoil a lot easier to manage, and second, you can use a much shorter barrel to get very similar recoil on the M4, which makes it a lot easier to maneuver in tight spaces and around corners. To start this build off, the easiest way to do it from scratch is to buy the blank M4 receiver from Mechanic Level 2, and then add the VLTOR MUR1S upper receiver, the 370mm AR-15 barrel, and the SI Advanced Buffer Tube to start the whole thing off. To finish off the base of the build, I then add the JP Gas System 5B and the Avalanche Mod 2 charging handle, and then all the base pieces are good to go. Starting from the muzzle, the top tier part for the M4 meta build is the Blackout 51T flash hider, plus the AAC SDN6 suppressor for top tier suppressed recoil stats. This combo is really expensive, but the stats are also pretty amazing. Next up, the handguard is the SAI 14.5-inch quad rail handguard, which gets you best in slot stats and will require a 4.1-inch M-lock rail to add a grip. For attachments on the handguard, I go with the Shift foregrip for high ergonomics and then an X400 flashlight and laser combo. The stock I use for pretty much any build that it fits on is the MOE carbine stock with the rubber butt pad attachment, which gives you really good balanced stats for a fairly low price compared to some other choices. For the pistol grip, my top choice is the Grawl S grip for the top tier ergonomic stats. For your choice of optic, it's really up to you and what you prefer, but in this example, I have a hammer scope with the Delta Point reflex sight as well, but I also use the Valde scope and the EOTech hollow sights a lot on this build. Finally, the last pieces that I add to this one are a pair of backup iron sights for the extra ergonomics points. When this build is all put together, you end up with 37 vertical recoil and about 70 ergonomics, for a total cost of around 320,000 rubles, plus whatever you choose for a scope or sight, which is pretty damn expensive even for a meta build. If you have plenty of cash though, this build is definitely worth the cost, simply because of how versatile and accurate the M4 is, with ammo that basically turns armor to paper after the first hit. Next up for this video, we're taking a look at a much chonkier build with the full-size M1A SAS DMR build, and I had a really hard time deciding between this thing and all the other solid 308 builds that you can make in Tarkov. The M1A has been a favorite of mine basically since it was first added, and before it was even really a good choice to use. It's always been a powerful and accurate rifle, but it's only in the last few wipes that it became a top tier build, able to achieve remarkably low recoil for a 7.62 rifle. While I do prefer the looks of the SR25, and I would say many people prefer the full auto SA58 and MDR over the semi-auto M1A, I always end up going back to the M1A for a few key reasons. First up, and most importantly compared to the MDR, RSAS, and SR25, the M1A has much better magazine choices, able to use 30 or even 50 round mags instead of being stuck with 20 rounds is the best option. The other reason that I love the M1A is purely statistical. You can get an excellent balance of recoil and ergonomics onto your build, and if you have a good trigger finger, I honestly think you can fire this thing faster than an MDR on fully automatic, and it has much better overall stats than an SA58. To start this build off, you can make the barter trade at mechanic level 3 for 17 Wilston cigarettes to get the whole base of the build for a good price. Alternatively, I like to just buy the blank receiver from mechanic level 3 and then the 22-inch barrel as well and build out from there. For the muzzle device, I personally like to run my M1A loud with the 3-piece LANTAC combo, starting with the A3 adapter, then the blast mitigation device, and finally the LANTAC Dragon compensator. If you want to run suppressed, the Thunderbeast suppressor is your best option, but personally I find the loud M1A to have much better ADS times and stamina drain. Next, you want to add the Troy SAS chassis onto this build, because this is basically the one part that makes the M1A evolve into a really awesome build. For the grip and tactical device, I have the Fortis Shift foregrip on most of my builds, as well as the X400 flashlight and laser. For the stock, I start off with the Mesa Tactical Buffer Tube and then add the MOE Carbine stock and the rubber pad. This combo gets you a great balance of high recoil reduction and decent ergonomics. Thankfully, the devs added a trader purchase for the best pistol grip for this build, so now you can buy the MOE AR-15 grip from Peacekeeper and slap it right onto this thing. The choice of optic is kind of up to you, and I like to switch it up, but one of the overall best choices for the M1A is the EOTech Voodoo scope, which is really good at long and close range encounters with a very high field of view. I like to stick this into the JP 30mm mount with a delta point reflex sight on top for those really close range fights. Finally, the last piece on this build is just a pair of MBUS iron sights for the extra ergonomics. When this build's all put together, you get a very solid combination of 50 points in both recoil and ergonomics, which is among the best overall stat lines that you can get for a 308 rifle in Tarkov. For a total cost, you're looking at around 300,000 rubles, including the cost of the Voodoo scope setup. If you like DMR builds and semi-auto weapons, I still think the M1A is the top all-around choice since it has a huge mag size advantage for fighting multiple people at once. To finish off this video, I've got a choice that is much simpler to build than the M4 and the M1A, with the suppressed MP7 build. In my opinion, the ultimate close quarters SMG in Escape from Tarkov. Like almost every other SMG in Tarkov, the MP7 is a compact weapon with a very high fire rate, small rounds, and a relatively short effective range. Unlike almost every other SMG in Tarkov though, the MP7 was specifically designed to shoot through body armor, and it does that job better than any other SMG in the game, pretty much without contest. I would say the direct competitor to the MP7 would be the Vector in either 9mm or 45 caliber. At the start of this wipe, everyone was complaining that the Vector was massively overpowered and destroying the game, but all along I kind of knew that as soon as everyone was wearing good armor, the Vector was going to get ditched in favor of the trusty MP7, and I feel I was pretty much correct. It may not have the raw damage of other SMGs in Tarkov, but literally no other SMG class weapon can take down armor as quickly as the MP7, and because of that, it's easily my high-level CQB weapon of choice. To build the meta MP7, you really only need 4 parts, starting with the Rotex 2 suppressor, which gives a small boost to recoil control and silences your shots. Next up, I add the Fortis Shift foregrip for the extra ergonomics and the X400 flashlight and laser combo for my tactical device. Finally, you basically just need a sight, and I usually go with the EOTech hollow sight on my MP7 builds. You can also add a pair of iron sights for some extra ergonomics if you want, and it helps the build a little bit. When this build is all set up, you end up with 43 recoil and around 55 ergonomics for a total cost of around 190,000 rubles. You can also set this up on an MP7A1 and you get basically the same stats, you just can't add a foregrip to the build. Well, that pretty much covers it for this video of my top 3 picks for meta builds in Escape from Tarkov. I'm definitely interested in what you see as the strongest builds in the game as well, so leave a comment and tell me if you agree with me or if you rank other builds higher than these. Like I said in the intro, I'll be doing similar videos to this one covering my most used budget builds and my most used just for fun builds, so stick around the channel if that interests you at all. There's also going to be a lot of coverage of the new weapons in the 12.11 patch, including both types of the Scar and the Mark 47 Mutant, which I am really excited to get my hands on. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream, Discord server, and Patreon page down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.